Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's last post ceremony. My name is Sandy Smith, and joining us today from the Royal Australian Navy is Commander Jocelyn Blowfield. Today's last post ceremony tells the story of Private John Makinson, an Aboriginal soldier as part of National Reconciliation Week, which runs from the 27th of May to the 3rd of June. These two dates mark important milestones in Australia's journey to reconciliation. On the 27th of May 1967, the Australian public voted overwhelmingly to change the Constitution to include Aboriginal people in the census and to allow the Commonwealth to create laws for them. On the 3rd of June 1992, the High Court of Australia made the historic Mabo decision, which acknowledged Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples' unique connection with the land. In commemorating Private John Makinson, we recognise those Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander servicemen and servicewomen who played their part in walking the path to reconciliation. Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people have served in every conflict and commitment involving Australian defence contingents since Federation, including both World Wars. They came from a section of society with few rights, low wages and poor living conditions, but once in the Australian Imperial Force, they were treated as equals, paid the same as other soldiers, and generally accepted without prejudice. Despite their courage and commitment to fighting for a nation that afforded them second-class status, most came back to much the same discrimination as before. By telling their stories, we hope to come to an understanding of the depth of their sacrifice and dedication, which will in no small way illuminate the path to reconciliation. A shared history of service and commitment will unite, not divide. This evening, we commemorate the service of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples and National Reconciliation Week and the milestones by which they are defined. We warmly welcome the family of Private John Makinson, whose family are watching the live stream of this ceremony. His story will be told shortly. We are honoured to acknowledge General Jenny Carriganan, Chief of the Defence Staff Canadian Armed Forces, accompanied by Admiral David Johnston, Chief of the Defence Force. We also warmly welcome Mr. Patrick Delgaitis, Deputy President of the Returned and Services League of Australia, ACT branch. As always, we welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. The live stream of this ceremony is made possible by the Returned and Services League of Australia and the RSL and Services Clubs Association. We welcome members who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the pool of reflection by a representative of the Makinson family, visitors to the memorial, students on behalf of St Aloysius College visiting from Adelaide, South Australia, and students on behalf of Port Macquarie Steiner School visiting from Port Macquarie, New South Wales. If you are able, I now invite you to please stand and join in singing the national anthem.
All under bonds
for those who are able, please be seated. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 103,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection.
Today, we remember and pay tribute to Private John Makinson. It is in honour of the proud tradition of Indigenous Australian military service that we tell his story today. John Makinson was born on Wiradjuri country in Dubbo, New South Wales in 1891. He was one of 10 children born to John and Catherine Makinson, though only 6 children reached adulthood, leaving John the youngest surviving child. Around October 1896, John's father and oldest brother left the family to go to Walgett for work. John, his mother, who was pregnant with her 10th child, and his 5 siblings were left in a house at Miles Street, Dubbo, near the hospital, living on the charity of neighbours without bedding or food. Learning about the situation, the police took some blankets and food to the family, while medical aid and other comforts were supplied by the hospital. John's mother died shortly after giving birth, as did the newborn boy. Until mid-May 1897, John and his siblings were cared for by a policeman's family before being admitted into state care. John was fostered to a number of families and finally allocated to Mr. Dixie Chapman at Dungog. John's foster care records note that authorities could not contact John's father. By the time of his father's death, John was an apprentice with James R. Fuller in Dungog, but by November 1905, he had absconded from his apprenticeship and disappeared. He later found work as a sawyer in Queensland's Sunshine Coast hinterland at Biawa. John enlisted in the Australian Imperial Force in Brisbane on the 4th of June 1915. Although the Defence Act and Army regulations prohibited the enlistment of men not of substantial European descent, John's application was accepted without issue. He was allotted to the 4th Reinforcements of the 25th Australian Infantry Battalion with the rank of private and commenced initial training at Enoggera Camp. After 3 months of training, Private John Makinson departed Brisbane in HMAT Armidale on the 18th of September, bound for Egypt. John arrived in Egypt too late to join the Australian forces on the Gallipoli Peninsula, and instead passed the rest of 1915 training in Egypt. In late February 1916, he was transferred to the 9th Battalion at Habita, joining Delta Company. The battalion left Egypt in late March and arrived on the Western Front in early April. The battalion began its experience of the Western Front in the north of France, training and providing reserve support. John was briefly hospitalised with influenza in late April, but remained with the 9th Battalion when they moved into the firing line outside Fromelles in mid-May. The battalion remained in northern France throughout May and June, alternating between frontline service and support from the reserve trenches. On the 27th of June, John was temporarily detached to the 1st Anzac Corps for escort duty. He returned to the 9th Battalion in early July, just in time for their move south into the Somme Valley, ahead of the planned Allied offensive. A key objective of the British offensive was the village of Pozières. The surrounding ridges offered an essential advantage for the advance. Over 42 days, from late July 1916, the 1st, 2nd and 4th Australian Divisions made 19 attacks against German positions in and around the village. Artillery bombardments destroyed the village, and by the end of the fighting, over 23,000 Australians had become casualties, including 6,800 men dead. Just after midnight on the 23rd of July, the men of the 9th Battalion left their trenches and began to attack German positions. Over 2 days, they conducted 3 operations against German trenches and managed to capture and hold their positions against heavy German counterattacks. When the battalion left the area, it had sustained 393 casualties, including 65 missing in action. One of the men missing in action was Private John Makinson. Later investigations revealed that soon after leaving the trenches with a bombing party, John and his mate Clary Smith were seriously wounded by shrapnel, which struck John in the right temple. He and Clary were dragged into a shell hole in no man's land by Private Billy Snow, where John died of his injury an hour later. Clary survived, and he later recalled that he died very brave. He tried to write a note in his pocketbook. He knew he was going, and he said, "I'm done." John Makinson was 25 years old. John's remains were never recovered from the battlefields at Pozières. He is commemorated on the Australian War Memorial at Villers-Bretonneux along the names of over 10,000 Australians who died whilst fighting in the First World War and who have no known grave. His name is also listed on the Roll of Honour on my right, among almost 62,000 Australians who died while serving in the First World War. His photograph is displayed today beside the pool of reflection. This is but one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Private John Makinson, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the Ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them. Lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozières or in the low scrub at Gallipoli with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain has thought in his last moments, well, it's over, but in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony. On behalf of our director, staff and volunteers, thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial today and for your continued support during the memorial's development project. We wish you all a very pleasant evening.